Hello and welcome to hopefully a fun and helpful new series on the channel called Bible FIFA. Basically, for this series, I've put together a team on FIFA 21 of players whose names correspond with authors or books in the Bible. Each episode, I'm going to play a match with the team, and when I score with players on the team, I can then go to the Bible and read a verse or passage which relates to the player I scored with, and also with the time that they scored the goal in. So let's say I scored with Lucas Moura in the 12th minute. I can then go to either the book of Luke or the book of Acts, because Luke wrote Acts, and I can read from chapter 12 in either of those books, or even sort of chapter 1 verse 2, because it relates to the goal time in that way. And I'll just do a short little talk about it, and that'll pretty much be each episode of the series. I'll hopefully keep them quite short. This one might be a bit longer with the intro, but without further ado, let's hop in and have a look at the Bible FIFA team which I've put together for FIFA 21.
So I've managed to make a full chemistry team that I think covers all of the books in the Bible. So if I score with Lucas Moore, I can read from the book of Luke or Acts. Gabriel Jesus, anything that Jesus said in the New Testament. Marcus Rashford from the book of Mark. If I score with Jude Bellingham, I can read anything from the book of Jude. If I score with Paulinho, anything that Paul wrote, such as the book of Corinthians. Mateo Kovacic, I can read from the book of Matthew. If I score with Reece James, I can read anything from the book of James. If I score with Jonathan Tarr, I can read from the book of John. If I score with Peter Galaski, I can read anything from the book of Peter, so I might put him on penalties. David Abraham, something David wrote like the Psalms, or anything to do with Abraham's life. If I score with Joshua Brennett, I can read from the book of Joshua. And then moving on to the bench, if I score with Jonathan David, anything that David wrote like the Psalms or the book of John. Isaiah Brown from the book of Isaiah. If I score with an icon, I can read anything I like from the Old Testament in relation to the goal time. If I score with Daniel James, I can read from the book of Daniel or the book of James. Hickman, I can give my testimony. Paulinho, another option to read from something that Paul wrote. Jeremiah St. Just from the book of Jeremiah. Joel Linton from the book of Joel. Moses Simon from something to do with Moses or Simon Peter. Jesus Corona, I can talk about how Jesus can give us peace during coronavirus. Joshua King from the book of Joshua or the book of Kings. Eccles from Ecclesiastes, I'll read from there. And every team to do with Bible FIFA needs a pastor as the manager. So that's the team. Let's get into the first match highlights. So here's the fairly solid team I came up against, and it started off really well from a corner, headed in with Marcus Rashford, which was just after the 12th minute, so it went down as the 13th minute for a goal from him, which gives us an option to read from the book of Mark. But then the lad went up the other end and scored this quite spectacular chip for 1-1. And then a hopeful punt upfield / a really well timed through ball with the keeper. He rounded my keeper at a moment of madness, buried the finish for 2-1. However, straight from kick-off, I went on a mazy run with that boy again, Marcus Rashford, whipping out the skills, some unnecessarily, some like that, and that pretty well timed for 2-2, which gives us another option to read from the Bible passage. But then right at the end, in the 87th minute, he slips this man through down the wing, Hakimi, and he buries it far corner for the win. But we have a couple of options for the Bible passage, so let's go into that now.
So from the game we just played, we have a couple of options for what Bible passage we can go to, and we're going to go with the goal that I scored with Marcus Rashford in the 13th minute, and go to Mark chapter 13, where one of Jesus' disciples comes to him and says, "Look, teacher, what wonderful stones and wonderful buildings." As he's looking at the buildings and the archaeology around him, admiring them, and straight away Jesus says to him, and gives an unexpected answer like he often does in the Bible, "Do you see these great buildings? There will not be left one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." And he straight away just brings some perspective on how these buildings are temporary, they're not going to last forever. He then goes on to talk about signs for the end of the age, where, it gets closer to end times, where Jesus is getting close to return. He says there's going to be things like earthquakes and famines and, things like global pandemics like COVID are all a sign that this earth is groaning, that there are sufferings in this world, and that ultimately, Jesus is going to return at the end of the time to thankfully sort of take up his followers with him into heaven, into an earthly paradise where there won't be any sin, suffering, evil, pain, all of the sufferings that have filtered the world from when Adam and Eve ate the fruit, and all of us as humans have made bad choices. We do evil things. No, none of us perfect, But the beauty of the gospel and the Bible is, and what Jesus has done for us, is that he came and died for us to forgive anyone who puts their trust in him from sin. All of us have done things wrong. None of us can say we're guiltless. Everyone's told a lie or done something at some point. But Jesus came to die for anyone who puts their trust in him as a free gift of grace. He went through the most gruesome death on the cross, out of sheer just love and compassion for a paining, world that is suffering. No one would look around them and saying that this world is a fun place to live in. There's horrible things in this world, horrible evils, pandemics like this, which just stop and make us think for a second of actually how temporary and fleeting life is, where we've gone from doing everything we've been able to want to do to all of a sudden being very restricted with lockdowns and things, what we can and can't do. And I just want to encourage you, if you're not a Christian, to just take a few moments to have a think about, could there genuinely be a God out there that is bigger than all this, that cares about me, that sent Jesus to die for me? Because if it's real, it changes everything. I'm grateful for the meaning and hope in life that God's given me, to know that he's both with me in the struggles of this life and wants to help me in them, but also that when it comes to the end of my life, that I'll be with God in eternity in a world without suffering and pain, which Jesus has come to give us hope into, that we can come through the other end of this life in this world full of difficulties and struggles and be in a better place with him one day. But he also wants to help us in those struggles. And if you're not a Christian, I want to encourage you to look into that, to consider whether that's true, to ask God to perhaps reveal himself to you, to give you that faith that you need. If you are a Christian, then it's just an encouragement of the wonderful hope and security that Jesus has given us in this life and the struggles of day-to-day life, that he's with you and helping you. But let's not get caught up in doing our own thing if you're a Christian, or if you're not a Christian, and just getting sucked along with the flow of life. We need to remember at the end of this passage, Jesus says no one will know the day or the hour when he returns to take his believers up with him. And if you're not a Christian, just please spend the time to at least look into faith and ask God to reveal himself to you if he's real, because he's done that for me and I'm so grateful for that. He's done that for many other Christians I know. And I really believe that he wants you to come to know him. It says in the Bible he doesn't want anyone to perish. He wants all to reach repentance, all to come to know him, to have that peace and security in life, and to be with him ultimately one day for eternity in a world free from suffering. That's what my prayer is for you. And I just hope, you found this encouraging, and this series I hope you find helpful.